All right, we're back here, and now I'm going to take this little strip set that I've created, and I am going to show you the correct way to sew a perfect four patch. And there's a little secret that I want to show you, and that is the direction that your seam allowance is going on the back of your project. Now, if you all know, you all have feed dogs on your sewing machine. And when you feed this piece of fabric through your sewing machine with the seam pointing in the direction that you're sewing, what'll happen is the feed dogs will grab this little seam and it'll flip it backwards. And when it does that, it creates a gap. And so a lot of people go, what am I doing wrong? I've pinned it, but it's the nature in which you're sewing it together. So if at all possible, when sewing four patches together on your sewing machine, always make sure that the seam that's on the bottom is pointing towards you and that the seam on top is pointing in the direction that you're sewing. So you can see here that I've got my seam on the bottom pointing towards me and my seam on top is just nested into it, and I'm not even going to use pins. I'm going to line those fabrics up and I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch that down. And then I'm going to show you how to spin these seams. All right, so here we are back at the sewing machine. My settings for piecing are the same as they were for when I was strip piecing. I've shortened my stitch length from 2.5 to 2, and my needle position, I've sent it to the right to a 0.8 setting. Now I just want to say that depending on your machine, not all machines move in the same increments, so your machine may just be a little bit different. Okay, so I've dropped my foot and I'm going to start to sew. Now I'm going to show you that the seam on the bottom is pointing towards me and the seam on the top is pointing in the direction that I am sewing, which is this way. And what that does is it creates a nest that the two seams will nest together in. Because that seam underneath is pointing towards me, it will not flip and cause a gap. I can control the direction of what I can see. I cannot control the direction of which I cannot see. Just line that up. Continue sewing till I get to the end. All right, so we're at the end. I'm going to thread snips, and I wanted to show you that underneath my seam is going in the correct direction and it didn't flip. And on top, and when I open up my four patch, look at that. And that's because of the way we had the seams nested into one another. I never used any pins, and the machine will naturally push those two seams together. Now the last thing that we want to do before we press is to spin those seams. So I take my two ends and I pull them apart and twist them. It gives me a little mini four patch on the back, and it just takes out all the bulk. Let me show you that one more time. Take my two seams, pull, it just breaks those few little stitches, and there you can take that into your ironing room, give it a gentle press, and you have a perfect quarter-inch seam and a perfect four patch. This is Jackie from the Myra Stitch and Post, and I hope these videos have been helpful. Thanks.